A profile of the Namibian coast was commissioned by NACOMA, or the Namibian Coast Conservation and Management Project, implemented under the auspices of the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, to develop and foster an integrated coastal zone management system. After extensive scientific studies and cooperation between conservation authorities, tour operators, private sector and local, regional and national authorities, a plan was drawn up to better conserve the coastal environment. According to the Nature Conservation Ordinance, Section 14, the area will be protecting wildlife, fisheries, plant life and also objects of geological, archaeological, historical and other scientific interest for the benefit and enjoyment of the inhabitants of Namibia. Through intensive conservation and sustainable use of existing resources, this region can now enjoy much greater care of the natural environment and wonders, whilst still allowing the local and national economy to flourish, and those visiting the area to enjoy all that it has to offer. Dorab National Park is unique in the sense that its aim is to find the perfect balance between leisure, recreation, and conservation. The landscape varies from river deltas to dune belts, gravel plains, and wonderful open stretches of coastline. Each different area containing some unique element or natural wonder, which may be prone to damage or complete destruction. Within these different areas, certain core areas have been set aside for the protection of some of the Namib Desert's rare and endangered species. In these core areas, no traffic is allowed wherever an area has been demarcated and signposted as an exclusion zone. In other cases, multiple use areas for adventure tourism was also set aside, so that the very same people who want to help contribute to the protection of this unique area will not be prohibited. Visitors can easily get into these areas and just need to obtain permits from the Ministry of Environment and Tourism. For example, the Dune Belt between Long Beach and Walvis Bay, for which you can obtain a free permit from the Ministry of Environment and Tourism. This is a move away from the traditional national parks concept, whereby visitors to the Dorab National Park still have ease of access to sites they wish to visit and enjoy the multitude of recreational activities. It has become a favorable situation for all parties involved. The Namib Desert has fascinated scientists and the general public for many decades. After all, it is the oldest desert on the planet. Life here has to cope with the many hardships that Mother Nature throws at it. And as a result of time and natural selection, the amount and variety of life forms in this dry corner of Namibia is astounding. The climate here is determined by various factors, the main one being the ocean. The cold Benguela Current, traveling up Africa's southeast Atlantic coastline, is cold and is not only the cause of the relatively cool coastal climate, but also the apparent lack of rain along Namibia's coastline. Moisture does reach the shore though, but not as one would expect it to. For at least 2/3 of the year, moisture rolls in from the ocean as fog. This fog drifts across the desert landscape, bringing with it life-sustaining moisture that is utilized by an endless variety of uniquely adapted desert organisms. One can say that life here depends on sunlight and the presence of fog. Although larger life forms are relatively scarce, it is the little creatures that make up the massive number of life forms for an arid area such as the Namib Desert. Much of Dorob National Park's land organisms are not always noticeable, other than the few plants and small insects running across the barren desert surface. However, this perception is entirely inaccurate. The amount of biological diversity, or biodiversity, rivals many other regions on our planet, which are often not nearly as inhospitable as the Namib Desert. This is due to the variety of life forms that have had so much time to adapt to all the challenging conditions. Between Swakopmund and Walvis Bay is a small but fascinating dune field. These dunes were originally part of the Great Namib Sand Sea further south. At first, this area looks abandoned and dead, but closer observation reveals that it is alive, a living desert. Observing the footprints left behind in the sand during the night and mornings can be a fun activity for the whole family. Tour operators such as Living Desert Tours specialize in viewing the so-called Little Five of the dunes. They can almost guarantee a glimpse of amazing creatures, such as the Namakwa chameleon, as well as ideal places to find their breeding areas. During one of these trips, you could find web-footed geckos, sidewinders, gerbils, and shovel-snouted lizards. The dune belt is also home to some of Namibia's endemic reptiles, such as the Fitzsimmons burrowing skink. Early mornings, when the fog rolls across the dunes, the fog-basking beetle, a small insect, is already at the crest of a dune, standing bottom up and head down, facing the drifting fog. As the irregular surface of the hard exoskeleton traps the fog, it forms droplets of water, which then slowly filters down along the ridges to the mouth. The thirsty beetle swallows the droplets eagerly.